I'm an atheist debunking atheism because atheism is to be distinguished as both a cosmology as well as a movement, and they need to be distinguished. And it's intellectual honesty. It's about acknowledging that atheism affects behavior, and I want to be accountable because naturally I'm that way. Now, the definition of atheism is one who stands alone in regards to theism and is a discipline of continuing to do so, because that's what the prefix a represents. It means stand alone because that's the consistent etymology pertaining to all of the applications of the letter A. There's theism, which is merely a relational term, right? And ism is the suffix that represents the discipline of. That's the consistent meaning of what ism is. And I'm an atheist that would like to find meaning without making a reference to God by fulfilling my own responsibilities, because I'm not an entitled piece of shit. Now, there are 4 stages to atheism. Technically, they're aspects, but they're stages because there seems to be a loss of integrity. Now, an atheist can remain an atheist, and there's no problem with that, as long as they remain as a backseat driver in the permanent sense, meaning that they're never overthrown. They never, for a moment, interiorly lose confidence. This is what is called hierarchialism. And anytime a claim is made, a claim is a promise that is made. Because when one claims that the laws are such and such, it means that the laws are always going to be that way, because otherwise evolution, as far as I can tell, everything moves towards death. Now, if everything moves towards death, there can't be any continued positive affirmation, because positive affirmation is how atheism is able to continue going on, and we don't want to destroy positive affirmation. Now, do we? Except I'm the only atheist, and all the other atheists are evolving from atheism into a different cosmology. So, the next aspect of what an atheist is, because we're holding such a standard to ourselves, is that there's this complex. And I don't want to have a complex. I don't want to have Stockholm Syndrome. But it seems to be that there's this complex that all of these other atheists have. And it bothers me because I'm trying to maintain a hierarchy. And that means I'm smarter than all of these other atheists. And that allows me to continue to be an atheist. And it's important that I'm allowed to do so because that's natural for me to say no, because that's the one free miracle argument that everyone is allowed to make, right? And that leads to the next aspect or stage of atheism, which is about panic art, where there is this, due to no longer being able to serve the claim is a promise, or even maintain the narrative in order for someone to figure out how to fulfill it, the insurance system kind of has to be activated. When one forms a community is supposed to represent an insurance group, because otherwise there is no community, it's a liability. A community that's a liability is just predation. Therefore, there is to be an acknowledgement that there's a slippery slope, spillover theory, soft ground theory, common ground argument to be made. Now, if a person says, I have the same problems as you, that doesn't necessarily make that person harmonious with me, because if I don't want to solve their problems because I'm trying to keep my resources, it's kind of problematic that they're trying to put their problems onto me. And that's something that we see distinguishable from atheism as a cosmology versus atheism as a movement. So finally, now we get into the real aspect of why I find there is an inevitable pinnacle collapse to pertaining to this everything moves towards death evolution narrative, because an atheist doesn't have to acknowledge evolution. They don't, because evolution has to demonstrate itself, and all the while I have the right to deny the evolutionary process, because, you know, it's only true if it actually concludes. So the final aspect of what makes an atheist is revenge, circular-denialism, sarcasm. That's something that I don't think is to be prioritized when it comes to atheism. Because if we're going to include all of these aspects in one character, you know, that's something that I'm not going to do, because it's a threat to my hierarchy. My hierarchy, whatever that hierarchy is defined as. And there are 7 ways in which I can find flaws in the way that atheists are communicating with one another so that we can solve this problem and continue atheism. Because I want to continue atheism. Let's continue atheism. Because atheism is a cosmology before it is a movement. Now, the first aspect of an argument is faith. How one invests their faith is faith itself, but this is being denied. Basically, no one, apologies, I don't want to say no one, because everyone's an atheist, and they're a person, even though we're all just matter, right? And matter is natural, and therefore matter is perfect, but there's a problem. Faith is the ability to act without knowledge. And when it is equated with the content that faith is baited upon, right? So making a claim in one place does not mean I'm making the same claim in a different place. Correct, right? One person's claim is different than another person's claim, as long as they're different. And the problem with this, for some people, is that all faith has to be the same pertaining to the risk that's being made. I don't want to make the same risk as another person. Nonetheless, there's something called natural law that inevitably, in the evolutionary process of ascension pertaining to a species, kind of results in, you know? And because I'm consistently seeing that everything moves towards death, that kind of destroys the point of the foundational argument of faith at all degrees. You know, we're supposed to have faith in a community, we're supposed to have faith in ourselves, but it seems that faith is never actually acknowledged for what it is. The next is definitions are conflated with evolving language. The idea that language evolves kind of contradicts the idea of definition, because a definition is a correlation with a word that has endured the test of time. Consistency is kind of important. If we get the same result of following a definition and knowing that the definition is true as it relates to nature, a continuing correlation is kind of important to have. Evolution of language denies the existence of definitions. And I have a problem with that, because it's the argument that everything is moving toward a mono-hierarchy, and it's the argument of equality, and because equality isn't supposed to contradict itself, but it is, I don't believe in equality. I believe that mono-hierarchy is what equality is, because demonstrably it looks the same. Then there's knowledge being conflated with matter itself. Matter being argued to always either being exoteric or esoteric. In this bipolar experience of what knowledge is either contradictory to the claim that is made that the universe is revealed truth, or that the universe is a mystery, and the universe is either one or the other. There has to be one definition in order for one to actually know something. And it's a problem because the universe partially doesn't always reveal a waterfall to a desert dweller. One's not going to see a waterfall in a desert. Therefore, that waterfall is esoteric. The universe gets to keep its secrets, which is why discovery is a term that is applied, because we're not always with knowledge. Therefore, there is something different pertaining to what knowledge is. And that brings me to the point of insight epiphany. And these things are being, an epiphany, a realization, is being completely relegated to identity politics. When did an atheist acknowledge that identity exists? Identity is the narrative of the soul. There is no identity. It's all matter. It's all natural. And when we have insight, it's being relegated to, it's just you. Then there's expertise. Expertise is no longer treated as a service with a promise. Because if a person is making mistakes, but they still accomplish what they promised, they're still an expert. They merely had to deal with interruptions. But expertise is being equated with ultimate authority, even though they're not fulfilling their promise. We have all of these replication problems in all of these fields of science, all of them. Why is there inconsistency in being able to formulate a scientific theory of how the universe works? It works one way. We're supposed to have a unified theory. Why isn't there a unified theory yet? I get to complain because I have money, and money causes me to have anxiety, ambivalence, because I want to spend it, but I also want to keep it, because it's this paradoxical item that's supposed to just be matter, but it's money, because it has some degree of meaning that can't be explained, including by hormones, because hormones are their own form of currency. So how does a currency give value to another currency? It's currency. It's all currency. It's all money. Money is money. That doesn't mean money is supposed to give meaning, but somehow people believe that it does. Then there is wisdom being treated as hate speech. And I think everyone has a problem with this, but everyone is an atheist, but they keep on saying hateful things such as, I'm a theist, or you don't know that there is no God. That's hateful. But it's a problem because it's supposed to be wisdom. Why? Why are we not able to actually have a codified book of wisdom saying don't do stupid things? How do we define stupid if all definitions are evolving? Because if it's not never agreed upon, how can there be wisdom if we have a problem with the idea of truth statements being disagreeable? If there's something disagreeable, that means there's something that will never be agreed upon. Therefore, wisdom cannot exist. It's problematic. And finally, credibility is claimed to be trumped by simply saying no, and is based upon circular denial tactics that promise spirituality while saying matter consolidates action. Therefore, there is no such thing as analogy. How can matter be everything and analogy be nothing, and people still claim to be spiritually seeking meaning in metaphors of legend and myth and religion and wisdom? It's self-contradictory. You can't say no while still saying yes. You can't have it both ways.